Hi everyone, welcome back to a new Roblox story. This time, the story is about the popular Roblox game Dead Rails. As always, not all of our stories are based on true events, but some are. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the story, if you dare. Before we start the story, shout out to Bertz. Thanks to you all for watching our podcast. Kate noticed the first signs around kilometer 30. Little things, coal disappearing faster than it should, weapons going missing from the storage chest, food vanishing overnight. She didn't want to suspect her teammates. They had been playing together for weeks. Chris was their leader, always making smart decisions. Lisa was their best fighter, never missing a shot. David was their medic, always sharing his bandages and medicine. But someone was stealing. "Has anyone seen the extra rifle?" Chris asked as they prepared to explore another town. "I swear I put it in the chest last night." Everyone shook their heads. David looked genuinely confused. Lisa seemed annoyed about the missing weapon. Kate said nothing, but she watched their faces carefully. That night, Kate stayed awake. She pretended to sleep while the others took their turns on watch. Around 2 a.m., she heard movement. Through half-closed eyes, she watched David creep to the storage chest. He opened it quietly and pulled out 3 pieces of coal. Instead of putting them in the furnace, he threw them off the train into the darkness. Kate's heart raced. David was sabotaging them. But why? They were a good team. They shared everything equally. David never complained about anything. Kate watched him return to his sleeping spot. She waited until his breathing became steady, then carefully got up. She needed to check the coal supply. What she found made her stomach drop. They were down to their last 5 pieces. At their current fuel consumption, that would last maybe 2 hours. Not nearly enough to reach the next safe zone. David had been throwing away their fuel for days. Kate wanted to wake the others immediately, but something held her back. If she accused David without proof, it would split the team apart, and they needed unity to survive. She decided to wait, to gather evidence, to catch him in the act. The next day, Kate watched David carefully. He acted completely normal, helpful, friendly, concerned about their dwindling supplies. When Chris suggested they needed to find coal urgently, David nodded seriously. "You're right," David said. "We should split up to search faster." But Kate noticed how David's eyes glittered when he said it, how he smiled just a little too much. They stopped at a small town around kilometer 45. Chris and Lisa went to search the eastern buildings. Kate and David took the western side. "You check that house." David pointed to a building across the street. "I'll take this one." Kate nodded, but didn't move. She hid behind a fence and watched David enter the house. Through the window, she saw him searching normally at first. Then he found something. A bag of coal. But instead of calling out to her, David looked around carefully and hid the coal under a floorboard. Kate's blood ran cold. David wasn't just wasting their fuel. He was actively hiding resources from the team. When they regrouped, David reported finding nothing useful. "Empty house," he said with a straight face. "Not even furniture to burn." Kate bit her tongue. That night, while David was on watch duty, she snuck back to the town. She found the hidden coal exactly where David had left it. Enough to refuel the train completely, but she also found something else. A note, written in David's handwriting. "Train 47. 4 players, will reach kilometer 50 tomorrow. Low on fuel, easy targets." Kate stared at the note in horror. David wasn't just sabotaging them randomly. He was working with someone else, setting them up. She took a photo of the note and the hidden coal, then hurried back to the train. Her mind raced with questions. Who was David working with? What did they want? When would they strike? Kate spent the rest of the night planning. She couldn't tell Chris and Lisa about David directly. He might run or become dangerous. but she needed to protect the team. The next morning, Kate suggested they take a different route. "I heard there's a shortcut through the canyon," she lied. "We could save time." David's face darkened. "That route is dangerous. Too many zombies." "We need to save fuel," Kate insisted. "The shortcut could help." Chris agreed with Kate. They changed course, heading southwest instead of continuing straight. Kate watched David's reaction carefully. He was trying to hide it, but he was clearly upset about the route change. Around noon, they reached kilometer 50. Kate was on high alert, watching for any sign of trouble. David seemed nervous, constantly checking his watch. Then Kate saw them. 5 players hiding behind rocks near the track, all armed with rifles, all waiting in ambush positions. "Stop the train!" Kate shouted. "What? Why?" Chris asked. "Ambush! Behind those rocks!" The hidden players realized they had been spotted. They opened fire immediately. Bullets shattered the train windows. Chris and Lisa dove for cover. But David didn't take cover. Instead, he grabbed the fuel from the furnace and threw it off the train. "David!" Lisa screamed. "What are you doing?" David pulled out a pistol and pointed it at Chris. "Sorry, guys. Nothing personal. My friends there need your equipment." Kate had her rifle ready. She had been expecting this moment. "Drop the gun, David." David spun toward her, surprised. "How did you—" Kate didn't let him finish. She fired once. David crumpled to the floor. Outside, the ambush continued, but without David sabotaging them, they had a fighting chance. Chris got the train moving while Lisa and Kate returned fire. The ambushers gave chase on foot, but they couldn't match the train's speed. Soon, they were left behind in the dust. "How did you know?" Chris asked as they tended to their wounds. Kate showed them the photo of David's note. "He's been sabotaging us for days, throwing away coal, hiding resources, setting us up for his friends." Lisa stared at David's body. "I trusted him. We all did." "That's what made him dangerous," Kate said quietly. "We never suspect the people closest to us." They rode in silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. The landscape rolled past outside, empty, hostile, full of hidden dangers. But the worst danger had been riding with them all along. Kate checked their fuel gauge. Thanks to the coal she had recovered, they would make it to the next safe zone. But the betrayal left wounds that would take longer to heal. In the distance, storm clouds gathered on the horizon. Another night was coming. Another test of survival. Kate gripped her rifle tighter and watched the darkness ahead. The storm hit them at kilometer 55, just as the sun began to set. Lightning crashed across the sky, illuminating the desert in stark, ghostly flashes. The train rocked back and forth as wind howled through the broken windows. "We need to find shelter," Chris shouted over the thunder. "This lightning storm is going to get worse." Kate peered through the rain and lightning. In the distance, she could see the outline of a large building. "There. Looks like some kind of factory." Lisa checked their map. That's Tesla's lab. We can't go there. It's too dangerous." "More dangerous than being hit by lightning?" Chris asked, as another bolt struck the ground nearby, sending sparks flying. Kate knew Lisa was right. Tesla's lab was one of the most feared locations in all of Dead Rails. The preserved brain of the mad scientist himself lurked somewhere inside, along with hordes of zombies and deadly electrical traps. But they were running out of options. "Maybe we can just wait it out in the entrance," Kate suggested. "We don't have to go deep inside." Chris nodded grimly. "It's our only choice." As they approached Tesla's lab, Kate felt a chill that had nothing to do with the storm. The building was massive, all twisted metal and sparking electrical towers. Strange blue lights flickered in the windows. Even through the rain, she could hear the hum of dangerous machinery. They brought the train to a stop just outside the main entrance. The building cast long, ominous shadows in the lightning flashes. The entrance doors hung open, creaking in the wind like a mouth waiting to swallow them. "I'll go first," Lisa said, checking her rifle. "Stay close behind me." They stepped off the train and immediately got soaked by the freezing rain. Lightning struck the ground so close that Kate could feel the electricity in the air, making her hair stand on end. The entrance hall of Tesla's lab was dark and cold. Emergency lighting cast red shadows on the walls. Strange scientific equipment lined the hallways. Machines Kate couldn't begin to understand. Some still sparked with residual electricity, crackling and humming in the darkness. "This place gives me the creeps," Chris whispered. Kate nodded. Everything about Tesla's lab felt wrong. The air itself seemed charged with malevolent energy. She kept expecting something to jump out at them from the shadows. They found a small office near the entrance and decided to wait there. It had solid walls and only one door. Easy to defend if something attacked. Lisa kept watch while Chris and Kate tried to rest. But rest was impossible. The storm outside grew worse and worse. Lightning struck the building repeatedly, sending showers of sparks through the electrical systems. Each flash illuminated the lab's twisted corridors, revealing glimpses of horrors lurking in the darkness. And then they heard it. A sound that made their blood freeze. Footsteps. Heavy, mechanical footsteps coming from deep inside the lab. "What was that?" Chris whispered. Lisa raised her rifle toward the door. "I don't know. But it's getting closer." The footsteps were rhythmic, deliberate, not the shambling gait of zombies. Something else. Something intelligent. Kate remembered the stories about Tesla's lab, how the scientist's brain had been preserved in a jar after his death, how it could animate mechanical bodies made from lab equipment, how it hunted intruders with cruel intelligence. "Tesla," she breathed. The footsteps stopped right outside their door. For a long moment, there was only the sound of their own terrified breathing and the storm raging outside. Then came a new sound that made Kate's skin crawl. Electricity, crackling, building up power. "Move!" Lisa shouted. They dove away from the door, just as a massive bolt of lightning punched through it. The metal door melted and twisted from the heat. Through the smoking hole stepped a nightmare. Tesla's preserved brain floated in a glass jar atop a mechanical body cobbled together from lab equipment. Electrical cables snaked around the creature like veins. Its eyes, if they could be called eyes, glowed with unnatural blue light. "Intruders," Tesla spoke, his voice like grinding gears. "You will become part of my experiments." Lisa fired her rifle at the creature's brain jar. The bullet bounced off harmlessly. The glass was reinforced. Tesla raised one mechanical arm, and electricity danced between his fingers. "Run!" Chris yelled. They burst out of the office and fled down a dark corridor. Behind them, Tesla gave chase, his heavy footsteps echoing through the lab. Lightning bolts crashed past their heads, scorching the walls. Kate's heart pounded as they ran through the maze of corridors. The lab seemed to go on forever, with passages branching off in all directions. Strange machines loomed out of the darkness. Tesla coils, death rays, experimental generators that hummed with dangerous power. "This way!" Lisa pointed to a staircase leading up. They climbed to the second floor, but Tesla was still following. His mechanical body moved with surprising speed, and his electric attacks kept getting closer and closer. "We need to find his weakness," Kate gasped as they ran. "There has to be something." Chris spotted a room marked Power Control. "Maybe we can shut down his electricity from there." They burst into the room to find banks of switches and electrical panels. Chris started flipping switches randomly, while Lisa kept watch at the door. Kate studied the control panels, trying to understand Tesla's electrical system. Then she saw it. A master switch labeled Emergency Shutdown. "Found it," she called out. But as she reached for the switch, Tesla appeared in the doorway, his glowing eyes fixed on her with terrible intelligence. "You cannot stop science," he said. "You cannot stop progress." Tesla raised both arms, electricity building to dangerous levels. Kate knew she only had seconds before he fried them all. She grabbed the emergency shutdown switch and pulled it down with all her strength. Every light in Tesla's lab went out. The humming of machinery died. Tesla's mechanical body froze mid-attack as his power source died. But the silence was worse than the noise. In the complete darkness, they could hear other sounds: groaning, shuffling footsteps. The zombies that infested the lab were moving. "We need to get out of here," Lisa whispered. Now, using their flashlights, they carefully made their way back through the dark corridors. Zombie eyes reflected in their beams. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. The creatures moved slowly in the darkness, but there were so many. Kate's group stayed quiet and moved carefully. One sound would bring the entire horde down on them. They crept past shambling figures, barely breathing, their hearts pounding so loud they were sure the zombies would hear. Finally, they reached the entrance. The storm was still raging outside, but it seemed safe compared to the horrors inside Tesla's lab. They ran to their train and fired up the engine. As they pulled away from the lab, the power came back on. Lights flickered in the windows, and standing in the entrance, his mechanical body restored, Tesla watched them go with glowing eyes. Kate knew they had only delayed him. Tesla was still alive, still hunting. And now he knew they existed. But they had survived Tesla's lab. That was more than most players could say. The storm began to clear as they reached kilometer 60. The night was still young, and they needed to find a safe zone before the real dangers began. Kate checked their fuel gauge. They had enough to reach the next safe area, but barely. "Look," Chris pointed ahead. "Lights, shots." A safe zone appeared in the distance, its defensive walls and turrets clearly visible. Kate felt a wave of relief. They would be safe there until morning. But as they approached the safe zone, something felt wrong. The gates were open, which was unusual. Safe zones were supposed to be locked and defended. "Where is everyone?" Lisa asked. They brought the train to a stop inside the defensive walls. The safe zone was completely empty. No other players, no NPCs. Even the turrets that usually defended these areas were silent and unmanned. Kate stepped off the train cautiously. The trading posts and supply buildings stood open and empty. No lights in the windows, no signs of life anywhere. "This doesn't feel right," she said. Chris checked one of the supply buildings. "All the supplies are gone. Someone cleaned this place out." A chill ran down Kate's spine. Safe zones were supposed to be safe. They were the one place in Dead Rails where players could rest without fear. But this felt like a trap. "We should leave," she said. "Find another place to wait out the night." But it was too late. As they turned back toward their train, figures emerged from the shadows. Not zombies. Players. Armed players with hostile intentions. "Well, well," said their leader, a tall player with a scarred face. "Look what wandered into our little setup." Kate counted quickly. 8 players, all armed with high-end weapons. Her team was outnumbered and outgunned. "What do you want?" Chris asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The leader smiled coldly. "Everything. Your train, your supplies, your equipment. Don't worry. We'll make it quick." Kate realized with growing horror that this wasn't random. These players had taken over the safe zone. They were using it as a base to ambush other teams. "David told us you'd be coming this way," the leader continued. "He was very helpful. Shame you had to kill him." So David's betrayal went deeper than they had known. He hadn't just been working with one group of ambushers. He had been part of a larger network. How many safe zones have you taken? Kate asked. Kate, the leader's smile widened. All of them between kilometer 50 and 80. We control this entire section of the desert. No one passes without paying our toll. Lisa's hand moved slowly toward her rifle. And if we refuse, then you die here. Your choice. Kate's mind raced. They were trapped. 8 armed players surrounded them. Even if they could reach their train, they couldn't outrun bullets. But then she remembered something. Safe zones had defensive turrets, automated weapons that fired at hostile players. If she could reactivate them. Lisa, she whispered, can you create a distraction? Lisa nodded slightly. What are you whispering about? The leader demanded. Just deciding how to split our supplies, Kate said loudly. We'll give you half. That's fair, right? The leader laughed. Half? You're not in a position to negotiate. While he was talking, Kate spotted the turret control panel near the main gate. If she could reach it, she might be able to turn the defenses back on. Actually, Lisa said, I think you're the ones who aren't in a position to negotiate. She suddenly dove to the side and opened fire. The ambushers scattered, looking for cover. In the confusion, Kate sprinted toward the control panel. Bullets flew past her head as she ran. The control panel was damaged but still functional. Kate's fingers flew over the switches, trying to remember how safe zone defenses worked. There, the master switch for the automated turrets. Kate flipped it on just as one of the ambushers reached her. The turrets came online with mechanical whirring sounds. Their targeting systems activated, scanning for hostile players. The ambushers had weapons that didn't belong to them. The turrets identified them as threats and opened fire immediately. Chaos erupted in the safe zone. The ambushers ran for cover as automated turrets tracked them with deadly precision. The leader screamed orders, but his team was scattered and confused. Kate's team used the distraction to reach their train. Chris fired up the engine while Lisa and Kate provided covering fire. The train lurched into motion just as the safe zone's gates began to close, an automatic security feature. They escaped into the night, leaving the ambushers trapped inside with the very turrets they had disabled. That was too close, Chris said, as they put distance between themselves and the compromised safe zone. Kate nodded, but her mind was already working on their next problem. If this criminal network controlled all the safe zones in this area, where could they stop for the night? The desert was too dangerous to travel through in darkness. We need to find somewhere else to hide, she said. Somewhere they don't know about. Lisa studied their map. There's an abandoned town at kilometer 65, not marked as a safe zone, but it has buildings we could defend. It wasn't ideal, but they didn't have many choices. As they approached the town, Kate could see why it wasn't officially listed. Half the buildings were collapsed. The church steeple had fallen over. The whole place looked like it had been hit by some terrible disaster. But it was shelter, and sometimes shelter was enough. They brought the train to a stop on the outskirts and carefully explored the town on foot. Most of the buildings were too damaged to be useful, but they found one house that was still mostly intact. This will have to do, Chris said. They barricaded the doors and windows as best they could. Lisa took first watch while Kate and Chris tried to rest. But sleep was difficult. Every sound made them jump. Every shadow could hide an enemy. Around midnight, the real horrors began. The howling started low and distant, but it grew closer and louder. Werewolves, the most dangerous night creatures in dead rails, and they were hunting. Full moon, Lisa whispered, checking the sky through a crack in the boarded windows. Kate felt her stomach drop. Full moon events were the worst possible night scenario. Werewolves had incredible health, devastating speed, and deadly claws. Even well-armed teams struggled against them, and Kate's team was down to their last few bullets. The howling got closer. Soon they could hear heavy footsteps circling the house. Werewolves were smart. They would test the defenses, looking for weak points. Something scratched at the front door. Long, slow scratches that sent chills down Kate's spine. The werewolf was testing the barricade. "How much ammunition do we have?" Kate whispered. Chris checked his inventory. 12 rifle bullets, 6 shotgun shells. Lisa had even less. 8 pistol rounds. It wasn't nearly enough. Werewolves had 400 and 500 health points. Even perfect headshots would require multiple hits to bring one down. And where there was one werewolf, there were usually more. The scratching stopped. For a moment, Kate hoped the creature had moved on. Then the entire house shook as something massive slammed into the back wall. "It's trying to break in," Chris said. Another impact. And another. The old wood began to splinter. "We need a plan," Kate said. "We can't fight them head on." Lisa was studying the house layout. "There's a cellar. If we can get down there and block the entrance, maybe they can't follow." It was risky. Cellars were death traps if you got cornered, but staying upstairs meant certain death when the werewolves broke through. The back wall exploded inward. A massive werewolf forced its way through the gap, its red eyes glowing in the darkness. It was huge, bigger than any werewolf Kate had seen before. Its claws gleamed like knives. "Cellar, now!" Chris shouted. They ran for the basement stairs as the werewolf gave chase. Its claws scraped against the wooden floor as it bounded after them. Kate could feel its hot breath on her neck. The cellar was dark and cramped. Stone walls, dirt floor, no windows. Lisa slammed the cellar door and threw the bolt just as the werewolf reached it. The door shook as the creature threw itself against it, but it was solid oak, reinforced with iron bands. It would hold, for now, but they were trapped. And Kate could hear more werewolves entering the house upstairs. The entire pack had found them. "There!" Lisa pointed to a corner of the cellar. "Looks like a tunnel." Kate followed her gaze. There was indeed a narrow tunnel leading away from the cellar. It was barely wide enough for a person to crawl through. "Probably connects to another building," Chris said. "Escape tunnel from the old days." It was their only chance. The werewolves upstairs were getting more aggressive. Soon they would break through the cellar door. Kate went first, crawling through the narrow tunnel. It was pitch black and smelled of earth and decay. She could hear Chris and Lisa following behind her. The tunnel seemed to go on forever. Kate's knees were scraped raw from crawling on the rough stone, cobwebs caught in her hair. And all the while, she could hear the muffled sounds of werewolves destroying the house above. Finally, the tunnel opened into another cellar. This one was in better condition, with stone steps leading up to a wooden door. Kate climbed carefully and listened at the door. Silence. She opened it slowly and peered out. They were in another house, this one on the far side of town. Through the windows, she could see their original hiding place. Werewolves were swarming all over it, tearing it apart in their search for human prey. "We made it," Chris whispered. But their relief was short-lived. One of the werewolves at the other house raised its head and howled. The sound was answered by howls from all around the town. "They know we're here somewhere," Lisa said. "They just don't know where." Kate counted the werewolves she could see. At least 6, maybe more, all massive, all deadly. And they were beginning to spread out, searching other buildings. "We can't stay here," she said. "They'll find us eventually." Chris was studying the town layout from the window. "The train is only 100 meters away. If we could reach it." "We'd never make it," Lisa said. "They're too fast." Kate thought desperately. There had to be something they could use. Some advantage they hadn't considered. Then she remembered the church. Even though the steeple had collapsed, the main building looked intact. And churches in dead rails always had holy water. "The church," she said. "Holy water kills werewolves instantly." It was a long shot. They would have to cross open ground to reach the church, and there was no guarantee the holy water would still be there after all these years. But it was their only hope. They waited until the werewolves were focused on searching buildings on the other side of town. Then they made their move. Kate ran faster than she had ever run before. The church was so close, but it felt like miles. Behind her, she could hear Chris and Lisa's footsteps, and from somewhere in the darkness came an angry howl. They had been spotted. Kate burst through the church doors, just as werewolf claws scraped the steps behind her. The church was old and musty, but the altar was still intact. And there, in a small alcove behind the altar, were 3 bottles of glowing blue liquid. Holy water. Kate grabbed one bottle and spun around just as the first werewolf crashed through the church doors. The creature was enormous, its red eyes fixed on her with predatory hunger. She threw the holy water bottle as hard as she could. It shattered against the werewolf's chest, and blue light engulfed the creature. The werewolf howled once, then dissolved into ash, but more were coming. Lisa and Chris each grabbed a holy water bottle as 2 more werewolves entered the church. The battle was brief but terrifying. The holy water worked perfectly, dissolving each werewolf on contact, but they only had 3 bottles for 6 or more creatures. When the last bottle was used, 3 werewolves still remained, and Kate's team was out of ammunition. They stood in the ruins of the church, surrounded by piles of ash that had once been living monsters. The surviving werewolves circled them slowly, savoring the moment. Kate closed her eyes and prepared for the end. Then she heard gunshots, lots of them, coming from outside the church. The werewolves turned toward the sound, confused. More gunshots, human voices shouting, "Get away from them! Rescue!" Someone had come to help. The werewolves, caught between 2 groups of humans, hesitated. That hesitation cost them everything. The newcomers burst through the church doors with rifles blazing. In minutes, it was over. The remaining werewolves lay dead. Kate and her team were alive. "You folks okay?" asked their rescuer, a kind-faced woman with greying hair. "We heard the shooting from our train. Figured someone might need help." Kate nodded, too relieved to speak. They had survived another night. Barely. The rescue team was larger than Kate's group. 8 players with good equipment and plenty of ammunition. Their leader introduced herself as Captain Sarah, a veteran player who had been riding the rails for months. "You're lucky we came along," Sarah said. "This whole area has become a hunting ground. Criminal players have taken over most of the safe zones." "We know," Kate said. "We barely escaped from one of them." Sarah's expression darkened. "It's getting worse every day. They call themselves the Rail Raiders. They've set up a whole network to rob and kill other players." Kate felt a chill. The ambushers who had killed David weren't just random criminals. They were part of something bigger and more dangerous. "How many of them are there?" Chris asked. "Nobody knows for sure," Sarah replied. "But they control at least 50 kilometers of track, maybe more. They've turned this part of the desert into their personal kingdom." The implications were terrifying. If the Rail Raiders controlled that much territory, how many other players had they killed? How many teams had been ambushed and robbed? "There's something else," Sarah continued. "We've been hearing stories. Players who join the Rail Raiders don't always do it willingly. Some are forced to work for them, threatened, blackmailed." Oh, Kate thought about David. Had he been working for the Raiders willingly? Or had they somehow forced him to betray his team? She would never know for sure. Sarah's team offered to travel together for safety. The combined group would be harder for the Rail Raiders to attack. Kate accepted gratefully. They needed all the help they could get. But as they prepared to leave the ruined town, Kate couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Someone or something was out there in the darkness, waiting, planning. The Rail Raiders knew about them now. They would be expecting another attack. And David's betrayal was just the beginning. The combined convoy moved slowly through the night, 2 trains travelling close together for mutual protection. Kate rode with Sarah's team while Chris and Lisa stayed with their original train. It felt safer to have more people around. But safety was an illusion in dead rails. As they approached kilometre 70, Sarah received a radio message from another player team. "Captain Sarah, this is Train Echo. We need help. We're under attack at the Sterling mine. Please respond." Sarah grabbed the radio. "Echo, this is Sarah. What's your situation?" Static filled the air. Then, "They've got us surrounded. At least 20 players. Heavy weapons. We can't. Oh God, they're breaking through." The transmission ended in gunfire and screaming. "We have to help them," Sarah said immediately. Kate felt torn. Part of her wanted to help the trapped players, but another part knew it could be a trap. The rail raiders were smart. They might be using fake distress calls to lure in rescue teams. "It could be an ambush," she warned. Sarah nodded grimly. "It could be, but if it's real, those players are going to die without help." The moral choice was clear, even if it was dangerous. They changed course toward the Sterling mine. The mine was an old silver operation that had been abandoned years before the zombie plague. Now it served as a point of interest for Dead Rails players. Dangerous to explore, but containing valuable loot. As they approached the mine, Kate could see the truth of the distress call. A train sat derailed near the mine entrance. Bodies lay scattered around it, and moving among the wreckage were figures in dark clothing, looting everything they could find. "Rail raiders," Sarah said quietly. "We're too late." But then Kate saw movement near the mine entrance. Survivors. 3 players hiding behind mining equipment, pinned down by raider gunfire. "There," she pointed. 3 survivors. We can still save them." Sarah made the decision quickly. "All trains, attack formation. We're going in." The rescue was swift and brutal. Sarah's well-armed team caught the raiders by surprise. Most of the criminals fled when faced with superior firepower. The few who stayed to fight were quickly overwhelmed. Kate's team helped evacuate the survivors while Sarah's people secured the area. The survivors were badly wounded, but alive. "How many raiders were there?" Sarah asked one of the survivors, a young player named Marcus. 25, maybe 30, Marcus replied weakly. "They came out of nowhere, said we were trespassing on their territory, started shooting before we could even respond." Kate felt sick. The rail raiders weren't just robbing players anymore. They were claiming territory, killing anyone who entered their areas. "We need to get word out," she said. "Warn other players about what's happening here." But Sarah shook her head. "Who would we tell? The raiders have infiltrated the player networks. They have spies everywhere. Any warning we send out would just tell them where we are." It was a hopeless situation. The rail raiders had become too powerful to fight directly. And without safe zones to rest in, legitimate players were at their mercy. As they prepared to leave the mine, Kate noticed something strange. Among the raiders' abandoned equipment was a radio, still turned on. Voices were coming through the static. "Base, this is Sector 7. The mine operation was a success. Eliminated 6 players, captured their equipment. Kate's blood ran cold. The attack on the mine had been planned, organized. The rail raiders weren't just random criminals. They were operating like a military force." "Copy Sector 7. Return to base for reassignment. We have new targets incoming." "Roger. Base. Sector 7 out." The radio went silent. Sarah had been listening too. Her face was pale. "They're not just raiding anymore. They're conducting military operations, clearing territory. This whole area is becoming a war zone." Kate realized with growing horror that David's betrayal had been part of something much larger. The rail raiders weren't just after their team's equipment. They were trying to control the entire Dead Rails world. And they were winning. The convoy pressed on through the night. now carrying the 3 survivors from the mine. The wounded players told more stories of rail raider attacks, entire trains disappearing, safe zones being captured and converted into raider bases. "They're building an empire," Marcus said weakly, "taking over the whole game, piece by piece." Kate stared out at the dark desert. Somewhere out there, the rail raiders were planning their next move, and legitimate players like her team were becoming an endangered species. As dawn approached, they finally spotted a safe zone that hadn't been compromised. The walls were intact, the turrets were manned, and defensive players could be seen patrolling the perimeter. But as they approached, Kate noticed something that made her heart skip. Among the guards on the wall was a familiar face. David. He was alive. And he was wearing Rail Raider colours. Kate grabbed the radio. "Sarah, stop the trains. We've got a problem." "What is it?" "David, my old teammate. He's alive and working with the Raiders." Sarah focused her binoculars on the safe zone walls. "I see him. This whole place could be a trap." Kate's mind raced. David had faked his death somehow. The body they had seen on the train floor must have been staged. But how? And why? Then she remembered something. David was a doctor class. He had access to medical supplies, fake death potions, revival items. He had been planning this betrayal for much longer than she had realized. "We need to leave," Kate said. "Now, before they spot us." But it was too late. Searchlights from the fake safe zone were already sweeping toward them. And standing on the wall, pointing directly at their position, was David. The rail raiders had found them. "All trains! Emergency retreat!" Sarah ordered. "Maximum speed!" But the trains were already surrounded. Raider vehicles emerged from hidden positions all around them. Fast attack vehicles with mounted weapons. The convoy was trapped in a killing zone. "This is Rail Raider Command," came a voice over the radio. "You are surrounded. Surrender your equipment, and you will be allowed to join our organization. Resist, and you will be eliminated." Eyes, Kate looked around desperately. They were outnumbered 3-1. The raiders had heavy weapons and defensive positions. It seemed hopeless. But then she remembered something from the Dead Rail's lore. Tesla's electromagnetic pulse weapon. If they could reach Tesla's lab, they might be able to use the lab's equipment against the raiders. "Sarah," she called over the radio. "Tesla's lab. If we can reach it, we might have a chance." "That place is a death trap," Sarah replied. "Not as much as staying here," Sarah made the decision. "All trains, new heading. We're making a run for Tesla's lab." The convoy broke through the raider encirclement with desperate speed. Bullets flew past them as they raced across the desert. Behind them, raider vehicles gave chase. Kate had never seen the trains move so fast. The landscape blurred past as they pushed the engines to their limits. But the raider vehicles were faster. They were gaining ground. Tesla's lab appeared on the horizon, its twisted metal towers reaching toward the sky like skeletal fingers. Lightning still flickered around the building, and Kate could see the blue glow of electrical equipment in the windows. "How do we know Tesla won't just kill us all?" Marcus asked weakly. Kate didn't have a good answer. Tesla was definitely dangerous, but the rail raiders were a certain death sentence. Tesla was just a possibility. They reached the lab just as the first raider vehicles caught up. The convoy crashed through the lab's outer fence and came to a stop in the main courtyard. "Everyone out!" Sarah ordered. "Into the building!" Kate grabbed her rifle and ran for the lab entrance. Behind her, she could hear the raider vehicles arriving. Gunfire erupted in the courtyard. The lab's interior was just as she remembered it. Dark corridors filled with strange equipment, the smell of ozone and electrical discharge, and somewhere in the darkness, Tesla's mechanical footsteps. But this time, Kate wasn't afraid of Tesla. She was afraid of the rail raiders outside. "We need to find Tesla," she told Sarah. "Make a deal with him. You want to negotiate with a mechanical madman. He hates intruders. The raiders qualify as intruders." It was a desperate plan, But desperate times called for desperate measures. They found Tesla in his main laboratory, working on some incomprehensible experiment. The mechanical scientist turned his glowing eyes toward them as they entered. "More intruders," Tesla said in his grinding voice. "You will make excellent test subjects." "Wait," Kate stepped forward. "We're not here to steal from you. We're here to warn you. There are enemies outside, many enemies. They want to destroy your work." Tesla's mechanical head tilted to one side. "Enemies?" "Armed humans. They want to raid your laboratory, take your equipment, stop your experiments." Tesla's eyes blazed brighter. No one may interfere with science. No one may stop progress. The sounds of battle were getting closer. The rail raiders had entered the building and were fighting their way through Tesla's security systems. "Help us stop them," Kate pleaded, "and we'll leave your laboratory alone, forever." Tesla was silent for a long moment. Kate could hear his mechanical brain processing the information. Finally, he spoke. "Agreed. But after the enemies are destroyed, you will still become my test subjects." It wasn't the deal Kate had hoped for, but it was better than being killed by the rail raiders. Tesla raised his mechanical arms and electricity crackled between his fingers. "Let us show these fools the power of science." The battle for Tesla's lab was like something out of a nightmare. Tesla moved through his own building like an avenging god, electricity flowing from his fingers. The raiders' weapons were useless against his mechanical body. Kate and her allies followed behind Tesla, mopping up any raiders who survived the scientist's electrical attacks. Room by room, they fought through the lab. David was among the raiders, Kate realized. She spotted him in a group of enemies trying to flank Tesla. For a moment, their eyes met across the chaos of battle. David raised his weapon toward her, but Kate was faster. Her rifle shot took him in the chest, and this time she made sure he was really dead. The rail raiders were brave, but they were no match for Tesla's home ground advantage. The mechanical scientist knew every trap, every defensive system in the building. He used them all. By dawn, the battle was over. The surviving raiders had fled. Tesla's lab was secure, but Tesla hadn't forgotten his bargain. As Kate and her allies prepared to leave, the mechanical scientist blocked their path. "Now you become my test subjects," he said. "As agreed," Kate thought quickly. "But the raiders might come back. You need us to help defend your laboratory." Tesla considered this. "True, very well. You may remain as my laboratory assistants. You will help with my experiments." It wasn't freedom, but it was better than death. And so Kate found herself trapped in Tesla's lab, working for the mad scientist she had once feared. But as time passed, she realized something important. Tesla wasn't evil. He was just obsessed with science. And unlike the rail raiders, he could be reasoned with, worked with. Maybe this was better than the outside world after all. The desert beyond Tesla's lab had become a war zone. The rail raiders controlled most of the territory between the major safe zones. Legitimate players were either killed, captured, or forced to join the criminal organization. But in Tesla's lab, Kate was safe, protected by the most dangerous NPC in the game, working on experiments that might one day help other players survive. It wasn't the ending she had expected when she first noticed missing coal from their storage chest. But it was an ending she could live with. The betrayal that had started with David had led her to this strange sanctuary, and here, surrounded by Tesla's incomprehensible machines, Kate finally felt safe. Outside, lightning flashed across the desert sky. The storm was passing, a new day was beginning, and Kate was ready for whatever came next.